60% of people are right this moment are considering leaving their work because of their manager.
It just doesn't impact you while you're there. It impacts you when you've left. 3 years later, I'm still feeling the effect of a bad boss.
Money's never the number one reason why people want to move or even open to a conversation with me. It's always about the people.
These bad boss types, we all have them to some degree. They're not black and white. You're not just one. You can be shades of all of them in different situations of the day.
Amazing. Well, look, thanks for joining me, guys. This is actually a first for me. I've not interviewed a husband and wife duo before, so I love it. Absolutely love it. Love the fact you wrote a book together as well. I was speaking to my wife. I was like, we should write a book together. And you're still married, exactly, and still smiling as well.
I thought this was a therapy session, Lewis. This isn't a therapy session.
You don't want therapy from me, let me tell you. Oh, I love it. Why don't you? I'd love to hear it. Why don't you introduce yourselves? Maybe Debra, do you want to start? Just kind of a little context. What you've done career-wise, and then Ken, love to hear your background too, and we can explore what makes a great boss or a bad boss, depending on your perspective.
Perfect. So I've been doing HR my entire career, which is over 20 years. Too many companies to list, but a variety of industries, company sizes, roles, and such. And then for the last 4 years, I've focused more on my title is Chief Pay It Forward Officer. So things that I can pay it forward. So I've written, this is my 6th book that I've written. I do things like consulting, and I do things like speaking, but things to help my fellow HR professionals and also leaders be as great as they can be.
Where did the pay it forward come from? Like, how did you?
How did I come up with it? I made a joke once in my last company when I wrote my 2nd book. I wrote with my CEO, and he was sending me off around the world doing talks and doing workshops, and I loved it. I said, my job is all about pay it forward. You should call me Chief Pay It Forward Officer. He's like, nah, I don't like that idea. So when I started my own company, I'm like, that's it. That's what I'm going to call myself.
Love it. Love it. How long have you done your own business for?
4 years, I think it is. It's hard with the pandemic. They sort of like blend together with the pandemic. Do you count it as a full year, or like dog years? Is it, 2 years for every one? I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's true. And have you got the best boss you've ever had right now?
You mean myself? I've got the worst boss right now. When I first started my business, Ken used to joke at me because he goes, you need to talk to your boss. Your boss is working you too hard. So yeah, I'm not the best boss for myself. I've gotten better.
Love that. Love that. Ken, what's your background?
By training, engineering. I thought I was going to solve the world through better code. But I blame Debra for my left turn in 2015. So 9 years ago now. I started my path into management. And before that, I never wanted to be a manager because people are hard. They're squishy. They don't do what, if whatever worked yesterday doesn't work today. And it's really confusing. But with Deb's encouragement and an awful lot of dog walks where we talked about what was going on here and what's going on there, I became a manager of software engineers, not just a software engineer myself. And that's given me a love for working with people. The best parts of my job are the people now. It's not a particular tech. It's not software that I wrote or whatever. It's the people. And I recently found out that a fellow that I had promoted up to being an engineering manager has now mentored and promoted somebody who I had set on the path to being an engineering manager. And now she's and that's just so exciting. I can't begin to tell you.
Yeah. How did you find your transition? Because I speak to a lot of folks that are really good at what they do, individual contributors, whatever that might be. Moving from like I to we is quite a hard thing for a lot of people to do, right? Which is what you have to do when you start to manage.
Yeah, hugely. When I started as an engineer, I thought I had to be the smartest guy in any room. I always had to know. I always had to have an answer. I always had to be quick with a comeback. But I have a handicap. I'm not really all that smart.
And that's not true. That's not true.
Way smarter than me, for sure.
It's really difficult to be the smartest guy in a room when you're surrounded with geniuses. And I've worked with some incredibly talented people. And I've finally, after a really long time period, learned that I don't have to have the answers. I have to talk to people and bring out the best in them, not the best in me.
Yeah,
And that's the most important thing. I think that's the key, is to not own everything myself, is to trust them to own it and bring us all together as a team.
I think, can I
I love
add
that.
one more thing? Because I did a talk last night. It was with a bunch of HR leaders, and we got into the conversation. We were talking about why we have bad bosses, and one of them is because
Mm.
people become a boss for the wrong reasons. And I think one of the reasons that Ken was so successful is because he did it for the right reasons. He didn't do it as a way to make more money or to have more prestige. He did it because he genuinely wanted to focus on helping people. And I think, it's important when you recruit people and promote people into leadership roles that they're doing it for the right reasons.
That's true.
Mm.
I also,
Great point.
it's an interesting thing. Great point. I will see. It's interesting because you look at people that get promoted into leadership roles, and it's always like the best salesperson, the best engineer. You were probably the smartest person in the room. That's why they wanted you to be the manager, or or the head of whatever it is. You kind of get thrust into it, and you get very little training early on to be a leader or manager. Interesting to get your thoughts on the different words as well. But also, it's a very different job, and not everyone is suited to be a manager, and you might not even realize until you start. It's quite it's a big thing. It's a really big thing. So much early on as
It
well. If
is.
you're
It
going to go to
is.
school and university and things, let's say, so much of your success is like on you. You do well at school, then if let's say you do well at school, you might go to university, do well at university, get your first job. Then again, early on, it's your personal performance, and then you go into management, and then, Ken, as you said, it's about empowering your team and all of that stuff. It's a tough spot to be in.
That first step from being an individual to being a manager is the hardest, in my opinion, because that's when you really have to learn the lesson that what made you successful yesterday doesn't make you successful tomorrow. Right? You have to use a different set of tools. You can't just be the smartest person in the room. I'm saying that again, kind of repetitious there. It is really, really important to understand you have now had a career change.
Yeah, and you
Yeah,
have to do a
yeah,
job so differently. I was a gymnast, so apologies. I use so many sporting analogies, but
love it.
as an individual contributor, I used to twist to the right. That's what I used to do. I got really good at twisting to the right. But then all of a sudden, as a boss, I had to twist to the left. And it's not as simple as just twisting to the left. You have to figure out how to do it, why to do it, the complications. So yeah, it's absolutely huge. And I agree with Ken. For me, it was the biggest jump. What made it even more difficult is my first time as a boss. I was a boss in the US.
Right.
So,
Is
I
that
just,
different?
well, yeah. So I hadn't been to training, like you said, but I role modeled what I had seen all my bosses in the U.S. do, and then I moved over to the UK. Now, keep in mind, this is 20 years ago, so the world has changed. I think cultures have blended a bit more. But all of a sudden, I started managing as an American, which is like in your face, say it as it is, no filter, and it didn't work. So, and that's happening even more. We've got, we as managers have to manage diverse workforces. So whether it's cultural differences or generational differences, you have to keep relearning, forget twisting right and left. You have to do a
Mhm.
double flip, a triple flip, whatever it is. It just, it's not an easy job.
No. How did you know it wasn't working? Like
Well,
your
in
approach,
this,
was it just people would
yeah,
switch off, the performance was bad, they were just like, I'm out, done, see you
yeah.
later? I mean, what was?
Well, in this particular situation, Ken will laugh because he always laughs at this story. I knew because about 3 months into my job, a very brave employee came to me and said that they had a Debra Corey support group that meets every Friday and compares stories of how I made them cry. Now, I did a talk last night and somebody in the audience said, I have to share my story. And she said, actually, I had a brave employee. I haven't even told you this, Ken. I have a very brave employee team who got together and wrote on a piece of paper all the things that she as a boss was doing wrong. And they really liked her and they wanted her to get it right. So they handed it to her as a gift. So both of those stories I think are good in that it helps us be more aware, but also it shows that your people um, trust you enough to be open. Because that's the problem. A
Yeah,
lot of
yeah,
times employees don't tell you when you're being a bad boss. I was quite lucky. They told me, and this person was really lucky because she got a whole list. I think she said she kept the piece of paper. She still has the piece of paper that they gave her.
yeah, yeah. No, no, people don't. They just leave. It's like, oh, my boss is rubbish, I'm out, or oh, nightmare boss, micromanager, whatever. I know you've got your 10 archetypes. I'd love to hear them, but yeah, you don't often get the feedback. It's, you know, people just leave. Life's too short, right?
Especially now with Gen Z, the articles that I'm reading are saying things like Gen Z is completely non-confrontational. They just don't want to do it. They won't have the hard, uncomfortable conversations, and they will just walk. They'll walk out the door, and that's a horrible shame. There's the opportunity cost to the organization, the knowledge that walks out the door, the experience. It's a very damaging event when that happens.
Yeah, yeah. Just to pull on that thread a little bit, confrontational, because it doesn't have to be confrontational,
No.
right? It depends on the
No,
perspective. And so for me, one thing I try and advocate for as a leader is have conversations with your team about things that don't really matter, chit chat, whatever. You open the channels of communication, because when something important comes around where you need to speak about, you've already got open dialogue, and it's much easier, and it isn't a difficult conversation, and they're probably more likely to want to trust you and speak with you and so
no,
forth. So
absolutely. I use the word confrontational because when there's a power imbalance and you don't have much experience, you
yeah,
people are afraid of having those conversations because they're at risk. They could be in a dangerous position. Now,
yeah, that's true.
once you've been in the trenches for a while and you have battle scars and you realize those are the conversations where the gold is. That's where the really, really good stuff is. If you can have those in an honest and respectful way and try to be constructive, the gift that the woman got from her team the other day, and the benefits that came from Deb having that conversation with her team, they're amazing. But
Yeah,
when you first start out, it feels like, oh my God, I can't talk to that person because I'll get it in the neck. Now, that's
Well,
usually not true. Most people are much more open and lovely, and let's have a great conversation. But I think it's that power imbalance that makes it feel that way.
Well, one of the in the book,
yeah, yeah,
we don't just talk about the problem; we talk about the solution, which is a model called the Great Boss Building Block Model. And one of the building blocks is trust, which I know, Ken, you're passionate about as well. And I genuinely believe that in order to, as you said, Lewis, open the door to communication, it has to start with trust. If you trust your boss, you can say anything to them. Like my one boss, actually all of my great bosses I had, probably one of the main reasons is that we had this mutual trust. And that is the foundation of anything, any relationship you have. Forget about the workplace, in your personal life as well.
yeah, yeah. Communication, being like a super communicator, being able to
Yeah.
communicate with different types of folks, lean in, know when to lean in, know when someone doesn't want you to lean in too much. All of those things is it's tough. Now, if we're self-reflective, so for leaders watching this, I know you've mentioned in your book 10 different types of bad bosses. So just in case I'm one of them, can you just kind of give me a little overview of what that might look like?
So why don't I introduce them just at a high level? So when we were
Please.
writing
Yeah.
the book, I don't know about you guys, but I think part of the problem is this stereotype of a bad boss. It's this horrible person you see on TV and cartoons and things like that. And we wanted to make it more real, make it more relatable, make it safe. So we came up with what we had seen, and we actually did research and spoke to people as the 10 most common types of 10 of bad bosses. And it's funny, someone asked me this yesterday. They're like, why didn't you put in this like horrible boss, And we're like, we didn't touch that because let's be real, a person like that is never going to change. Let's focus on what most of the people are. And that's where we came up with the 10. It's a shame, Ken, we don't have our limericks to do, but do you want to maybe talk through the 10 types of bad bosses?
Sure. We created emojis for the different bad boss types, so we could keep them in mind. So that, like they're parts of us, right? How, do you want me to just rattle through the 10, Deb, or do you?
Go ahead, you do
So
5.
do
I'll
you
do the
want
second 5. Oh, wait, I'm
Yeah,
Okay,
micromanaging. Sorry, don't want to micromanage. You do it your way.
no, I'm happy with that. So the first bad boss type that we list is an avoider. An avoider is a boss that you just can't find. The emoji for that one is a ghost. The second bad boss type is an ignorer. You can find them, but no matter what you say, they ignore you. The third one is a hoarder. When you talk to them and they give you a task or something to accomplish, they don't give you all the information. They don't give you all the context. So that you're at risk of making the wrong choices. The fourth one is the unappreciator. They feel, look, you get a paycheck. You don't get any thanks from me. It's your job to do your job. Get to it, you know. The pretender is the person who's always got a mask on. They always tell you what you want to hear. To their managers, oh yeah, we'll make it on time. To the employees, oh yeah, there's no stress. Let's just do this. Let's have some fun, whatever. Even if there is bad news, they always dress it up as good news, and that can be really uncomfortable. Okay, Deb, the other 5 are yours.
Uh, Fifth one is actually, I don't know if anyone's looking at this live, but they're the little emojis. I have my little cheat
Yes,
sheet
love
with
that.
my emojis.
Love that.
I think it was more fun coming up with the emojis, Ken, than writing the book. Now, equally fun.
It was good.
It was fun to do, yeah. The next one is the blocker. That's the person who gets in your way. They don't help you develop. They don't let you present. You know, they interrupt you all the time, those types of things. The firefighter, we're probably all familiar with that. That's the one who just sort of has no strategy, just throws you from fire to fire, and you're like, what's going on? Micromanager, that one doesn't need to be defined. We all know micromanager. The blamer, that one, they're like pointing your fingers in the emoji. That's the person who we call that the Teflon boss. You know, nothing sticks with them. It's always someone else's fault. And then the last one is the coercer, which is the only one which is a little bit, you know, it's the bully type of boss, not the evil bully, but somebody who, you know, I've done it before. I'm so embarrassed. I can remember it like it was yesterday in a meeting. And it was the first time I had facilitated a team of 10 people in a conversation. And, you know, for an hour, I listened to them go back and forth, and they weren't getting anywhere. So after about an hour, coercer Deb just was like, okay, we're doing this. And they're like, why? I said, because I'm the boss. At which time everyone in the room cracked up laughing. Luckily, we had a good relationship. They're like, because you said so? And they thought that was hilarious. But yeah, that's a perfect example of a coercer.
I want to add a couple of caveats here. These bad boss types, we all have them to some degree. They're not black and white. You're not just one. You can be shades of all of them in different situations of the day. It's really important to keep in mind that we all fall into this. Nobody is a perfect boss. We can try, we can make efforts, we can do our best, and even if we have a reputation as a great boss, we're all going to make a mistake here and there. And so the key is not to go, Ken is a blamer. Let's put a tattoo on his forehead so we all know. You know, it's not like that at all. We all have to admit I've made that mistake, and now I'm not going to make that mistake in the future.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think you have to be self-reflective enough to realize, as a leader, perhaps when you're exhibiting some of these things, because it could be under stress, right? Like you might be under severe stress, something might be going on, and your strength might turn into actually one of these emojis, and you're like, oh my god, you know. So I think being self-reflective is huge, and being honest with yourself. And if you can maybe catch yourself going, you know.
You hit on a point there. The reason we reckon the reason that these come into people's lives is traps. One trap is that everybody is familiar with is time. If I'm in back-to-back meetings all day long, my employees are going to see me as an avoider boss because I'm never there. They can't find me. I'm in a meeting. I'm always on the phone. I can't answer a question, right? And it's not because I woke up this morning going, I'm going to be evil. I'm busy. I'm doing the best I can for the company, but the way people perceive it is an avoider. And so there are traps for all of these kind of boss types.
Another one is
Yeah.
skills. You know, the example that I shared with you just now, I was a coercer because I didn't have the skills to do it well. I had to learn how to do it. So again, that's a trap that we fall in. But you know, I'm glad that you said that, Lewis, because you know, we are not this book and what we're trying to do through the book is not about pointing fingers, making people feel embarrassed. I mean, that's why, you know, every time we do talks, we share stories. You know, I've done it already you know, in our conversation, we share stories of how we've done it so that people are brave enough to admit it. And then to your point, move on, admit they've done it. I posted something today, big sign that says, I'm sorry for having been a bad boss. You know, admit that you're sorry, learn from it, move on, make another mistake. You know, that's just what happens in life.
We're human. You know, I mean, because again, this caricature, you know, when you're a leader, and Ken, to your point about you wanting to be the smartest person in the room, right? It's like a lot of leaders feel they should have all the answers. Like people don't want to admit. And actually, it's so empowering where when you say to your team, actually, you know, what do you think? I have no idea. Or love to hear your thoughts. How can we, you know, it's powerful because it takes a lot of weight. I speak to a lot of leaders. There's a lot of, it's heavy to be in
But
that role.
But that's what we were taught, though. I was taught that I was supposed to have the answers. I had a boss once, I can remember. I was working on a new project in HR, and I wanted to go out and talk to the leaders in my company and my employees. And he said, "Isn't that what I pay for you for? Aren't you the one with all the answers?" And you know, I hear him in my brain all the time, and it's like, get out of my head. I don't have to have all the answers.
I love what you just said there, Lewis. Um, that it is so powerful. One of the most powerful moments I ever had was when I was a tech lead at Santander, and I was trying to be the smartest guy I could, and I just flat did not understand this something, and I had to stand up in front of God and everybody and say, "Guys, I just don't know the answer here. Does anybody have experience with this problem, or has anybody seen this?" What I found is that for my team of 10 people, all of a sudden, instead of having one exhausted, stressed, puny brain working on a problem, all of a sudden I had 11 brains looking at this thing from 11 different angles with who knows how much experience. Oh my God, we solved that problem in 15 minutes flat. It was so
Amazing.
powerful. It's a superpower being able to say, I don't know publicly.
And how
Massive.
amazing did they feel? That's the thing also that we forget. You know, we think that our people are going to look at us and say, oh, they don't have an answer. Instead, they're going to look at us and go, oh my gosh, they believe in me. They trust me. They want me to help come up with this solution. It's so empowering for them. Absolutely.
Yeah, because it's just in the ripple effect of being a bad boss but not realizing, and also, you know, just demonstrating these behaviors and the way you make people feel and the way they go and behaving with their family. How's your day? Yeah, amazing. Or oh my God, it's not. You know,
Yeah.
it's a big ripple effect. You don't realize.
Can I quote some numbers here?
Please. Yeah.
60% of people are right this moment are considering leaving their work because of their manager. The flip side of that is that managers uh, have the highest impact on anybody's life, even more so than a spouse or a doctor. I mean, think about that a second, right? If you're a manager and somebody comes to you and you dump on them, you ruin their day. That's worse because they spend more time with you generally than they do with their spouse. So that's worse than them going home and having a big row with their spouse. That is
Yeah.
It's
so powerful.
it's actually the same as your spouse. So I think it's like 60.
Sorry,
It's the
sorry.
but it's the highest. So they said who
Yeah.
has the biggest impact on your mental health? And it was your boss and your spouse, but it was less than your therapist. So you're right. I mean, it's absolutely huge, but it makes sense. I mean, the idea of the book, the title, Bad Bosses Ruin Lives, comes from experiences that we've had and other people have had where, you know, you don't just finish work, walk through a door, wash all of that crap away, and you're Susie Sunshine at home. You know, it absolutely has a negative impact. And you know, even every time people tell me their bad boss stories, and we just saw one the other day, someone shared with us, it just doesn't impact you while you're there. It impacts you when you've left. You know, it's that it's again, it sticks with you in a different way. You know, 3 years later, I'm still feeling the effect of a bad boss. And I'm not saying everybody gets to that extent. Most people do not ruin lives. They negatively impact lives. They don't ruin lives. We just want to make sure that nobody gets to that
Yeah, yeah,
extreme, because that's
yeah,
where the trouble happens. And we've both been impacted by it, Ken. So yeah.
as an individual, it's
Um,
interesting because we've been talking about. Sorry, Ken, go on.
there's a little bit of a delay, so I do apologize. What I was going to say is writing this book was partly an act of catharsis, because for all the 10 bad boss types, I can't speak for Deb, but I know I had at least one example for every single type of bad boss. Now I also know I go to work with the best of intentions in the morning, but I've had some really poor moments out there, and so yeah, to anybody who's listening, I do apologize from the depths of my soul.
Yeah, let's talk about the employee for a bit then, because we've kind of addressed a little bit about the bad bosses and stuff, and we're now talking a little bit about the effect that one can have. And it's difficult. I mean, I've built my career poaching people from companies, right? I run a global search firm, and I am speaking to people in jobs and finding out what motivates them, and all of the stuff that I do. And to emphasize your point, money's never the number one reason why people want to move or even open to a conversation with me. It's always about the people. It's the boss, it's the team, it's the culture. You have a bad boss, it stems down the cultures, all of those things, right? Um, so it's a big effect. Now, but as an individual, I'm a really big advocate for taking ownership of yourself, being the CEO of your career. And you might be dealt a really bad hand, right? Your boss might be an absolute nightmare. I think I'm a real big advocate for not trying to play the victim, so to speak, in my mind, because we're all in our own heads. And I think there's a lot of value for being proactive and, having a positive narrative, and whether that's just, I'm out, I'm moving. What are your thoughts on that? And just maybe following up from that, like any advice you can give to people that are currently experiencing like a nightmare boss, what they should do.
Oh, this is juicy. Yes, absolutely.
That's the next book, Ken, right?
It is. It is. It is.
I'll contribute a chapter.
There you go.
I'm going to sign copy of that when we finally publish it, Lewis. But one of the things that I would tell my people all the time is absolutely be selfish about your career. Take ownership of it, just like you said. You are the one steering it. Now, when you are in a job and you find a situation that you're frustrated about, okay, fine. We've got a situation. Is there anything I can learn from this? Can I learn to deal with a difficult boss? Can I learn to communicate better? Is there something good here? Can I squeeze this and get lemonade out of it? Is there something that we can make this a positive story later on? Now that'll look good on your CV and all that, but it is a chance to grow. If you can't, then obviously you have to plan leaving, but you never want to be the person that walks in the office and goes, you can stick this job where the sun don't shine. You don't want to be that person. You want to be the person who realizes it's time to go. You want to continue to do the absolute best you can for the company to honor the agreement, the contract that you signed with them, and plan ahead. Do your job search on your own time, carry on, find a place before you walk away. But like I said, it's far more important to see if there's something beneficial, something really valuable that you can take away from this situation at this moment in time. Deb, what do you think?
Yeah, great point.
I think I would add also that you need to take personal responsibility. A relationship goes both ways. Engagement goes both ways. If I look back on my bad boss situation, I could have done things differently. I could have, and I should have held my hand up. I should have spoken to my boss sooner. I should have understood what was going wrong. So I do think that, you need to take responsibility. You also need to understand yourself better and understand what motivates you and share that with your boss. So, your boss is not a mind reader. They don't know what's going on. When we talk later about the building blocks, certain building blocks might be more important for people. They might change. So that's why I think that relationship is just so important. And I, I am even though, the title of the book is Bad Bosses Ruin Lives, I am a glass half full kind of person. I genuinely believe that anybody can be a great boss. Anyone can be a great employee. But at some point in time, if you've tried everything, you've done your darndest, some of the best thing to do is just to walk away sometimes. And,
Yeah.
hopefully
No, I
that
love
doesn't
that.
happen as much, but yeah, as Ken said, walk away.
Yeah. Let me share one example myself. I do some exec coaching with board members, and I know not betraying anyone's confidence. I was coaching a CFO, and their issue was that the CEO was not asking them their opinion in board meetings, passing them over. They felt very isolated, and so we were doing some coaching, and we were talking through this, and they were going to they had their appraisal with the CEO, and the CFO was like, almost ready to leave. And so I just offered a different perspective and said, look, go into your appraisal and ask the CEO what top 3 things keep you up at night. Let me take them off your plate. How can I help you? Is there anything I can do to make your job easier? Because you never know what people are going through. There's maybe a reason why this person is behaving the way that they're behaving. So this person went in, asked those questions, and they said the look on the CEO's face, like a weight had dropped off. And lo and behold, the CEO was going through a tough moment. They felt it's lonely at the top. It's always interesting. I always have this phrase of like, who does the go-to person go to when you're struggling, right? You're the person. Where do you go? And so the weight off their minds, they gave some stuff to the CFO. The relationship's now incredible, and things change. So I think a lot of the time it's perspective. You're going through your thing, but sometimes there's a reason. And so bosses are humans too, and they also have emotions, and they're going through stuff themselves. You never quite know what's going on at home. You just don't know. And everyone loves shooting up at a boss, but I think if you take the approach of we're human.
Yeah.
How can I help you? That's a
Yeah,
nice way to try.
Absolutely. If employees always not just take ownership of themselves, but take ownership of a larger part of the project, and as you said, go up to their boss and say, "Is there something I can do? Is there something I can take off your plate? Is there something I can do to make you look better outside of the organization to help your reputation a little bit?" That can be very powerful.
Yeah, and 2 of the building blocks are authenticity and vulnerability. And when we write this book for employees, those will be for employees as well. We need to show our
Love that.
authentic self. We need to be vulnerable. And yeah, I think the more that people can do that. I've now given you the cough, Ken. Sorry.
Going round.
Yep.
It's gone around our family.
Going around. You mentioned the building blocks. Let's finish off with that, because it's a great spot. So for those leaders now that they're struggling, they know they're identifying some of these things. They've got the self-awareness to realize, is there certain things that they can do, and what are these building blocks that you mentioned?
So why don't I introduce the building blocks? So more than half of the book is about the building blocks, which is the action. So the first part of the book is about awareness and acceptance, awareness of the problem, acceptance of these are the things that my bad boss traits I need to work on, and then the building block model. And it's interesting because the building block model, we had an idea of what it was going to look like. It's called the Great Boss Building Block Model. And then we interviewed 25 thought leaders, and the building blocks changed radically, just because we wanted to get different leaders in different areas, different, people who'd written books on things like trust and empathy and feedback. And we ended up with 14 building blocks, which is a big number. My little brain can't remember 14, but we challenged ourselves and we said, as we write the section, if there's nothing at the end that, is that important, turn it into a blog or bring it in with another building block. But at the end of each one, Ken and I would be like, oh my gosh, this is good. This is good. People need to hear this. But the good thing about the building blocks, and then Ken can go through them, is 2 things. There's 2 types of building blocks. We've got the 6 at the bottom, which we call the 6-pack, because there's 6 of them, and also they're the foundation, like a 6-pack, the core that holds it up. And then there's 8 of them that are the supporting ones, and these are more the actions, the things that you need to do, like listening and communications. We'll go through them. The other thing is that they all have a partner. They're not alone. So like, no surprise, empathy and compassion. Empathy opens the door to compassion. Things like listening and communication, you have to do both. So they have partners. So at the end, there's maybe 7 of them. So, Ken, I'll leave it with you to talk through them. Let me know if you want me to jump in
Okay.
on any.
Okay. The foundation blocks are what you need to be, and the supporting blocks are what you need to do. Think of
Yeah,
it that way, right?
behaviors and actions. Yep.
Yeah. So for foundation blocks, you have respect and trust. You need to be these things. You
Yeah.
need to show respect. For trust, you need to show as a leader, you need to show trust first. Even if an employee messes up, you have to show trust again. You can't mistrust someone forever just because they made a mistake. You have to do it. It
Yeah.
starts with the manager in this case. Authenticity and vulnerability. Authenticity means you're true to yourself, and vulnerability means you can be honest and show your true self to your team, to your company, to the world. Empathy and compassion. Deb has already touched on these. The supporting blocks are the ones that you do. Empowerment and inspiration. Those are two sides of helping to motivate someone. Development and coaching. In this case, development, we were thinking of it as along the lines of career paths laid out within the organization or the career path that the person wants to choose. And then coaching is how you help them down that path, right?
Yeah.
Feedback and appreciation. Feedback is when you tell people both constructive and positive feedback. That was great, or that was great, but this could be improved, that sort of thing. And appreciation is when you just say, I really like how you did that. I really think that was a big contribution, that sort of thing. And then finally, listening and communications. Those really underline, I think you've touched on this already, though, is that the listening and communication touches everything.
Yeah, huge.
Now, I ran through a whole bunch of things there, right? I said a bunch of words that each one of those have in many books just about trust or just about vulnerability. The important thing to keep in mind is to use the ones that make sense at this moment in time. Now, we have an assessment tool, a free assessment tool that you can you can rate yourself against our bad boss types, and it will suggest building blocks that you can work on to improve your life and the lives of your team. If you go to badbossesruinlives.com, you can find the link there. But you use the blocks that make sense now, not all 14 at once. That's just too many to keep in mind. Just 1, 2,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah. But no, just working on yourself and just knowing all of these things, I think is wonderful. Being self-reflective, always wanting to learn and improve. And I think also, the world now is, there's so much going on the planet right now, right? It feels very polarized. On the macro level, there's just this craziness going on everywhere, right? And I think it's interesting because it stems then down into the company. And a lot of leaders are having to manage teams where people might fundamentally disagree with each other on very polarizing emotive issues, and just having the tools to be able to navigate. I think a lot of that stuff it's difficult. If you can do it, it's powerful. It feels like that's where we are right now, but I don't know whether it's always been like that. We just see more stuff now. We have the social media, news, everyone's like hyper informed.
It's definitely much easier for us to get wound up now about an issue that in previous decades we would have read about in the newspapers or watched on late night TV and sort of touched on it. Where now we've got social feeds where we're down to the second we can see stuff happening. The important thing to keep in mind is all of that divisive stuff. Is that relevant to your work? Is that necessary for your work? Now, if it is, then figure out how to work through it. But there were some people who they were making a statement at Google about the whole Hamas Israel issue, and they got fired by Google. And there were a bunch of people who were saying, well, they shouldn't be fired for expressing an opinion. I have to come down on the side here and say, is that a relevant message to be giving at work? Is that relevant to Google's business? Because when you in a team, a business team, you're there for a reason. When I was at my last company, we were there to empower people, to give them the tools to control how their money gets spent. that was our purpose. It wasn't to argue politics. It wasn't to argue wars or anything along that. We were very diverse. People from Brazil all the way over to Georgia. There were a lot of opinions there. That's not
Yeah.
why we were there. And so it's important as a member of a team to realize, don't pollute the team with stuff that doesn't really affect the team. It's not part of the mission.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, look, you've always taught not to speak about politics, religion, race, and stuff, right? But people do, and there's a lot of stuff going on. And I think, interestingly, big lesson for me, and I've got my kids' school to, they're actually bringing in an external firm to do this. Is they remember at school and stuff. If you're good at talking, you'd go into debating society, right? And you'd be debating, right? And my way's right, your way's wrong. This is why. And so much of, you look on everything that's going on, everyone's arguing, everyone's like, my way's right, this is why, and stuff. I'm a real big advocate for listening to understand, find some common ground with people, some shared things you share, right? So many people listen to respond, not to understand. And I think as a leader, if you can cultivate this, because this biggest part of communication is listening, but really listening, like leaning in and I think you can go a long way. I mean, there's not much you can do about your team discussing politics, and I mean that's just going to happen because it's part of life, and people are, some people are more into it, like just a whole spectrum of folks, right? But I think for me as a leader, it's listening to understand, it's trying to find common grounds, and I think that's one of the big thing that you can do as a leader.
And we talk about that under the building block of compassion, and quote the wonderful, amazing Brene Brown, who she talks about the concept of seek to understand. And what I love about what she says, because she always challenges the status quo, is that, I'm a big believer that you need to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and, understand what they're going through. And her point is, you're never going to be able to go in their shoes. You never are. They have a different perspective. So seek to understand for her perspective. And it was a light bulb moment for me, was more about listen to them, understand what they're going through and accept it. You might not be able to, you haven't done it yourself, but you can still respect it, understand it, and use it. And I don't want to get into this political conversation that the two of you are getting into, but I guess my point of it all is that you always need to think about the impact of what you say and what you do on other people. And with the world being so much more diverse, generations, cultural, it's not that you can't say things, but you need to really respect who you're saying it to and what the impact is on that person. Are they comfortable? Like me, I'm not comfortable about talking about those things. I'm just not. So people know, don't talk about it in front of me. Someone else might feel really strongly on the other side. So I absolutely agree to seek to understand. And that's why compassion is just so important. And go read Brene Brown's books, because they're fantastic.
Love that.
Or listen to her TED Talks.
Yes. Yeah, no, she does a great TED Talk. It's one of the most popular TED Talks, I think. And it's really interesting. I think we need more of that, more compassion, more listening to understand, trying to find things that we agree on. And, I think as a leader, to wind it up, it's a good place to kind of be, where if you can cultivate that skill, no matter what's going on the planet, hopefully you can foster a good culture and a good vibe.
I was going to say that, some people might be scared off and think, oh my gosh, it's going to take so much more time to do that. I need to be compassionate. I seek to understand. I need to listen. And I guess my thoughts are, in the short term, it might, but in the long term, it is going to save you time, help your people be better, help your businesses be better. Because, if you don't do it, you're going to piss your employees off. They're not going to be productive. They're not going to be engaged. They're going to leave. So, you need to put in the time and the effort up front to have more of that long-term impact.
Yeah, it's just opening channels of communication, being able to listen to your team if they want to talk to you about things, whether facilitating conversation, all of these things. So when the big things come, you've already got the channels open and you can have those chats. So good spot, good place to end, I think. Love it. I mean, we've done 45 minutes, which is great. It felt like 5. So thank you so much for for sharing. Where can people
Lewis,
get
you
your
make it
book?
so easy. You make it so
Me?
easy. It went so quick. Wow.
Thank you. Thank you. Where can people find your book?
Deb?
Go ahead. Oh, anywhere? I mean, I shouldn't promote
No, no,
one.
no.
Where? Go ahead, Ken. Where? Go ahead. You're the
The
techie.
book the book is on Amazon, but if you go to our website,
Alrighty.
badbossesruinlives.com, there's a magic link there that'll take you to the right store depending on which continent you're coming from.
And
Love it.
also on the website, you can download for free the introduction so that you can,
Oh, nice.
before you buy the book, you can learn a little bit more about it and see. And then also, as Ken mentioned before, the assessment tool is there as well. So yeah, by all means, because as we say when we do talks, every employee deserves to have a great boss and every boss deserves to be great. So hopefully this will help us tick the boxes in both areas.
Love that. Thank you so much, both of you. Love it.